Okay. Hello everyone. Welcome to another episode. A recommendation before I begin. I've shared this song in the chat section. This link to a song. Those who are listening on a computer, you can open a new tab and set the volume to 50% of that new tab and play any song at the background of this talk of mine, but I've recommended a song. Does attraction change when inner completeness shifts? Inner incompleteness shifts. And in the subtitle I've written everyone has a principal universal philosophy. The idea of the principal universal philosophy is it's a concept I've coined and created. I shared it in 2019, 18. I don't know when, but its evolution is in the talks. And so I noticed something. Really, the inspiration for this episode is that I noticed something that I feel is happening. And when somebody says feel, people are like, give me a break, man. It's like, you talk about your feelings, But I'll be honest, when it comes to the future, we are left with feelings. Anybody who cares for the future, they not only have to care about the past, but they have to care about the greatest activation of the present, pretty much. For this episode, I will be using the notepad, so it's important that viewers look at the screen. So we begin with the initial idea. Pretty much I'm going to deconstruct the sentence, then try to experientially explain what I'm talking about. I guess the simplest image to just give as a starting point is that I am considering that there is something in the human psychology that is attracting it to living, right? And if you look at this on a macrocosmic scale, it's a huge mystery. It's unknown forces at work, or the forces of nature that we haven't discovered yet. And there's people, for example, of the likes of Terence McKenna, who speak about a transcendental object at the end of time that is attracting us towards itself. But this concept of attraction can be seen on a micro level. It could be like, why is somebody attracted to, let's say, somebody with red hair instead of, for example, black hair? Or why is someone attracted to, someone with with a certain appearance, certain style, certain etiquette. These attractions that in some sense are the motivations of the human life. I have come to this conclusion, at least before this episode. I was sitting down and I was just writing on paper. I'm like, okay, there's something here that human beings are working under assumptions, ideological assumptions of themselves, and it's as if behind our eyes we are seeking out something that is not in front of our eyes, but when we get it, the attraction shifts. You know what it is? It's as if like there is something within the human being that is never satisfied. It's as if like there's a sort of infinite urge behind the eyes of a temporary creature. Now, I shared all this just to warm up the episode, but I'm going to start from the beginning, and I'm going to start by deconstructing this sentence. So the notepad's required for that. So, we start off with the sentence structure. Does attraction change when inner incompleteness shifts? So pretty much, I have my own unique style of solving problems, but to me there's pretty much a conceptual position and a contextual position, and if these two positions to any idea, or these two conditions, are cleared, then the idea has a sort of substance to it. So I guess I'll start about talking about what does the word attraction mean? What does the word change mean? What does the concept of inner incompleteness suggest? And in some sense, what does it imply when it shifts, right? So I would say that first we come to attraction. I'm going to read for people the definition of attraction. Some people might be very attracted to knowing the definition of attraction. The dictionary says, attraction, noun, the action or power of evoking interest, pleasure, or liking for someone or something. Another way it can be used, the word can be used, as a quality or feature that evokes interest, liking, or desire. And another would be a place which draws visitors by providing something of interest or pleasure, for example, tourist attraction. And the psychology of tourist attraction is not far away from the psychology of any sort of attraction. Ultimately, it's that we're attracted to that which we feel will complete us, So I would say attraction equals a pull towards a possibility. For example, we see it in media, Trying to think like what would be examples of it. It's like a person, let's say, there's this average Joe, and this average Joe sees like a beautiful woman. Or I would say, for example, for me, it's like there was this show, what was it called? There was this show, it was like this vampire kind of werewolf movie. It was called Lycans something, and there was this very attractive female actress, right? And she would go through intense situations, and through skill and ability and intelligence get through those, let's say, situations, right, in the movie. And it was like, it's as if the mind, for a second, my mind was fathoming, like, like dating like a vampire or something. Do you know what I'm saying? Like the mind. What I'm trying to say is that I think this is just pretty much, common sense psychology. We are attracted to what can be. That that's really attraction. People are attracted to what they don't have, it seems, on a like a very animalistic level, but they're also attracted to what they can have, you know. Like the reason the self-help industry is like $1 billion industry, you know, is why is it? Because people feel there's like, you know, hidden gemstones there or something, you know. It's so remarkable how much the psychology, like people look at like pirates, you know, the idea of a pirate, and you're like, man, you know, look at this primitiveness, right? But on some level, every human being is seeking treasure. But I would say I was very blessed to have my hands find this book called A Clear Mirror, and it's a Tibetan Buddhist book, and in it, for the first time, the idea of a treasure revealer was introduced to me, right? So let me tell you what I mean by this. In Tibetan Buddhism, they have this incredible attitude that there are not just physical treasures. There are treasures which are revelatory or remembrances. You know? It's another way of saying there are, let's say, valuable objects, right, that a person can attain in this life, like, you know, like the hip-hop community is, for example, obsessed with sneakers. Or with chains or whatnot, like, you know, what do they call it? Bling. It's like there's an outer treasure, which is like a trophy, but in the inner realms, the true treasure is pretty much, I would say, the activation of contentment with the space of greater experiences. The Buddha can be seen as a treasure revealer. You know, any human being that has done anything new, you know, on some level, it's a sort of treasure revealer. You know, that means it's in Tibetan Buddhism, the idea was that a person can reveal inner treasures. There isn't just outer treasures, okay? And so this notion that there is a potential, there is a possibility of a sort of reality, you know. For example, in you know, let's say pop cultural movies, you know, it's like a guy sees a girl, you know, or a girl sees this guy, and then the girl's like imagining already being married and what kind of father this guy would be and all of this, you know. Right? So it's as if attraction is a mental phenomenon that can have a consequence in the outer realms. You know, we are attracted to possibilities. You can even say, like, let's say somebody has a treasure map, okay, and they're like, I'm about to get to the treasure, and everybody's like, oh yeah, this man's gonna get the treasure, right? And suddenly someone comes and tells this person, hey man, you held your map upside down, the treasure is somewhere else. It's as if that person who had so much inspiration to, let's say, dig for treasure in a certain part, the moment he realizes it is wrong, the moment he realizes that it's like he cannot contextually discover the treasure, the person becomes hopeless and shifts. And you know, it's so remarkable that we have classified human psychology through emotions. So let me show you this picture here. I forget the person's name, but okay, here, let me see, find the guy's name. Emotional wheel founder. Psychologist Robert Plutchik. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but Robert Plutchik says, okay, here, I'll read it for you. Psychologist Robert Plutchik developed one of the most popular emotional wheels, known as the Plutchik wheel. He suggests that people experience 8 core emotions, which he arranged in opposite pairs on the wheel. So, here guys, check this out. This is Plutchik's, you know, I mean, it's for me, whenever geometry is mixed with whenever somebody like, let's say, a chemical reaction, you take geometry and you take philosophy, which is in some sense the narrative generation, right? And you infuse these, anything that has a like, I can't tell you, like, geometry, there's an eternity to it. Do you know? There's an eternal quality to geometry. So if people look at the screen, I'm gonna post this emotional wheel. You know, imagine it's like the rim of a BMW that is like that has like a, you know, smiley face on it. It's like, check out this emotional wheel, you know. I'm looking for a downloadable picture, guys. Hang on. Okay, there we go. I found it. So this is Plutchik's wheel. Emotional wheel, okay? And the reason I'm sharing this is because I want to, in this episode, incorporate an emotional perspective, right? Usually I'm not like an emotional person, or when I become emotional, it's as if once the emotion serves its purpose, it leaves instantly, usually. But anyways, so here in this picture, what do we see? Plutchik says there's 8 main emotions, and he's calling them, for example, terror, amazement, grief, loathing, rage, vigilance, ecstasy, admiration. So these emotions are modalities of perception, and let's say, for example, when a person becomes sad, or when a person is sad, what do they want? They're like, man, I wish I was happy, you know? It's as if an emotion enters the moment, paints the atmosphere of the moment, and then the person wants to step out of that moment. You see, there is some part of us which is, like, from the beginning completed, and there's one part of the human intelligence that is incomplete, and it is the relationship of these two universes that keep samsara. You know, it's another way of saying, if the world is a simulation, it's a simulation between incomplete beings and completed worlds. So, anyways, I just want to, stabilize or make more firm this notion that attraction, we're being pulled by a possibility, and I would say, I guess in Mr.Within thought, I would say attraction is when the inner realms have got something, have found something, when the inner realms access trying to think like, okay, in all the moments of my life that I have been attracted to, all the different things in my life, it's what attracted me to it. Right now I'm trying to think like, okay, what has attracted me to giving 10,000 talks? And I think it's just, you know, the impossibility factor and the novelty factor, right? That means it's like, I have this feeling where the human mind is like a lion, unlike the coyote. The coyote, you know, eats whatever dead carcass it finds, right? But the lion has to, in some sense, kill the gazelle itself, and then trusts it, right? And of course, in my school of thought, how I'm saying it is that pretty much there's a human being, and then in front of your eyes is the outer realms. Behind your eyes, the inner realms. When the inner realms access something that the outer realms have not yet accessed, that is when attraction happens. Attraction is like when we notice what we don't have. You know, is a reaction to what we don't have. Do you know? And you know what's fascinating? Let's say somebody is attracted to, I don't know, becoming like a successful Olympian or something, like Olympic athlete, right? And it's like the moment they get the medal, they win a medal, it's as if they're done, right? I don't know how to tell you, but it's kind of like, it's like a person is attracted to what they don't have, but the moment they have it, they realize they don't have the same incompleteness. You know, it's as if like, you know, people are thinking about how to complete life, but not a lot of people are thinking how their lives are incomplete. How incomplete, that being incomplete is literally the motivation for attraction. Because if a person had everything, do you know, let's say, I don't know, let's say you were Marcus Aurelius or Alexander the Great, or like some person in history. Let's say you were a Buddhist wondering about if you're in your past life you were a king, okay? And so this Buddhist, imagine, remembers that kingly ego. And that kingly ego being one where it's as if the king has everything and there's nothing that the lesser dimensions can give to the greater dimensions that they don't have already, you know? So I'm saying that if, like, based on this logic, I'm saying that if we are completed beings, there's no reason to be attracted to anything. But because we are incomplete, ever evolving, then we are attracted to the future's design. It's as if scientists are people who are like, how does the future look in front of our eyes? And philosophers are people who are like, how does the future look behind our eyes? This idea of a principle universal philosophy. It is my view, this is really a firm consideration of mine, that every human being is, their brains are occurring in accordance to code. That code is language, and it's another way of saying, like, every person has a principle universal philosophy, and that principle universal philosophy is hidden to the world. It's another way of saying, like, opinions come from a private world behind our eyes and in some sense towards a public world in front of pretty much, I guess, I don't know, I'll get back to this. The inner realms, I'm saying, like, have a role. Our attraction is how our mind is actually in the future, and the body isn't there yet, right? But I have noticed something, that one of the biggest things that still plagues mankind, people are worried about, for example, the coronavirus, right? COVID-19. However, there is something plaguing the species much more worse than COVID. And it is something that is plaguing any psychological entity in a, let's say, cause and effect, karmic reality. It is fear. So what that means is, let's say the brain, let's say somebody, I don't know, sees an opportunity, and their brain projects an opportunity, like their mind's already engaging with the moment and seeing how they would move in the moment. And imagine the person is too afraid to trust their own inner realms in regards to what it has been attracted to. You see, I feel it's not just attraction as if just only if something we want from it's how would I say it? It's not like attraction is how we want the future to happen. It's how much we're capable to abiding by our wants, right? I remember in getting introduced to Buddhist ideology. And in Buddhist ideology, they say the cause of suffering, the root of suffering is desire. And then I was shocked because I realized, what about the desire to drink a cup of water? What about the desire to, take a nap, or the desire to give a podcast? Like, are these desires also desires that must be let go, that lead to a sort of suffering? And then I realized suffering is like when an inner promise is not met in the outer realm. So the attention goes to an ability. It's not just like being attracted or the inner realm projecting possibility. It's also to be able to act upon it. Fear is that which is limiting us from acting upon it. Fear is another way of saying we have found a part of the world we don't want to enter. But believe it or not, because it's a changing world, our fears are, if we believe in our fears, it's the same thing as believing in, like worshipping an object. Fear is like worshipping a circumstance. The attention has to realize there is a freedom that is inconceivable. So anyways, we go to the idea of change. Change is another way of saying in a movement of, let's say, space-time continuum. And this equals change. Now we pinpoint change through, let's say, space and time, and Einstein came, like, this was pretty much, so I don't know if people know this about Albert Einstein, but pretty much Albert Einstein, he was working in a patent office, I think, patent office, and he was so smart because he took a job where he had a table to write stuff on, right? And so he writes these 2 essays. The first essay is on general entry, like on called general relativity, and then I believe that the second essay is called special relativity, and it's as if it's so mind-blowing at the time that it's as if it's like imagine writing 2 essays and like all the scientists in the world being compassionate enough to integrate the new knowing, into the collective server of human perception. So when it comes to space and time is how we mathematically translate, mathematically interpret how the cosmos changes. Space is, in some sense, how we are. The only way we have the philosophical idea of space is because there's something in it. It's as if that's considering the space. So it would be another way of saying like pretty much. Okay, here I'll say space. I'll give space its own order. I'll say matter. Okay. So when we look at the physics of the reality changing, right? Because what is change? Change has various dimensions. Change, one of the dimensions of change is the matter, the physical content. The second dimension of change is the shape of matter, right? It's as if like human beings are understanding matter through particles, and they're understanding particles in regards to, like, we broke the atom and we found the electron, proton, neutron, and so what is the electron? The electron's meaning exists in accordance to the geometry. What I'm trying to tell you is that the world is not just made of matter, it is also made of shape. Now, shape and matter are being experienced by the human being to be the same thing. But in other dimensions, for example, if a person closes their eyes and imagines, like, let's say, a sword glowing, like with that is glowing like with the color of starlight, with the light, like with starlight. Like imagine you visualize a sword hovering in the air. That is just like not a lightsaber, but you see the metal sword and it's just giving a sort of starlight glow from it. Okay, so it's as if a person can visualize the sword. It has shape, but it has no matter. A person can't just imagine like a sword and then grab that sword, right? The sword exists in our inner territory. It exists in the mind's room, right now. From the mind's room, in the body's room, I am talking about minds, for example. So change is another way of saying how matter and shape, how matter changes shape in space. Or I should say differently. I should say the movement of matter in space, pinpointed through time, equals change. Okay. So pretty much change is movement, right? Attraction is like more focused on what it is being moved to. Change is just the idea of movement. Now, inner incompleteness is an idea where recently I've been looking at it differently, and I would say it this way, that let me see. I would say let's have an analysis of inner and outer completeness. So for a second, guys, I'm going to open a new page and I'll come back to this page to finish the components of it. So we have pretty much, let's say we have a point, okay, and we have 2 lines that are going through this point. Now, one axis, we would call this let's call it completeness, in the other axis, we have the notion of, let's say, the inner, and we have the outer. So this is very important to consider, because when somebody talks about inner incompleteness, it's like this kind of relationship. It's like we're talking about here. Now, but anyways, I'll draw a line here. So we come here and we say, first there is outer completeness. Outer incompleteness. Then we say we have inner completeness and outer incompleteness. Okay. So when it comes to inner completeness, incompleteness, the contrast comes with three other possible dimensions. So it's like we have three ways of understanding inner incompleteness. Now, to simplify these, I'll just equate them. Outer completeness equals the known. Outer incompleteness equals the unknown, for example, the edge of the universe. Inner completeness equals known. And now, inner incompleteness equals unknown. Now, So I've written, could it be that we need an unknown solution to an unknown problem? So I guess the takeaways from this would be that the idea of inner incompleteness is an unknown circumstance and issue. It's as if it's like a problem where even the problem is unknown. I don't know how to tell you. Like, it's like an unknown problem. So I guess ultimately what I'm saying is inner incompleteness equals unknown problem. That's what it is, right? So I guess this whole page is just dedicated to this one word, incompleteness equally the unknown problem. So now I can go back to the previous page. So the title, does attention change when inner incompleteness shifts? So pretty much inner incompleteness is like the world you have access to not being enough for the world that is receiving it. It's like the world being expressed is not enough for the intelligence that is receiving the world. Right? And inner incompleteness, by the way, when we look at the past, we will find it's wasteland. Right? It's as if like a person looks back at their memories and they think of how many situations they could have behaved differently, but at the time they didn't know. So inner incompleteness, you can say, is also relevant to the past. Inner incompleteness is another way of saying we as a human being feel our memories are not enough. Desiring a new experience is like desiring a future memory, or a coming soon memory. Now, does attention change when inner incompleteness shifts? So I want to use this example of, let's say, somebody trying to buy a motorcycle, for example. Okay, let's say we have this example of, or let's say somebody who, let's say back in the day, there's a martial artist, okay, and this martial artist is attracted to the idea of becoming a master swordsman, and every day he goes into the forest and practices on trees, you know, simulates battle scenarios in his mind to just, you know, train. And this sword man, let's say this person who's attracted, you know, to mastering the sword, imagine he practices like every day for like 10 years. Imagine for 10 years every day, a couple hours as a warrior back in the day, kind of like you've held a sword in your hand. It's as if the sword is like you have full comfort with your element, you're fully in your element, right? So now this is where the sentence, the title of this episode, can apply to a sort of psychological setting. So imagine this person who practiced the sword for like, let's say, more than 10,000 hours or something, right? This person became a master swordsman, and now imagine after becoming a master swordsman, the person's suddenly is not inspired to learn to fight with the sword anymore. And now imagine this person is inspired, for example, to practice holding a shield in his left arm, or practice archery, or practice like using a spear, or whatever way they fought back in the day. So something in the psychology of this person who mastered fighting with a sword suddenly made him no longer be attracted. It's as if, like, a perfect example, another example would be this Japanese comic that was made into this show, this anime show called Vinland Saga. And one of the central characters in this show is this man called Thors, which is like the smartest, like, not the smartest, the strongest warrior in the whole show, right? And this strongest warrior in the whole show has mastered his fighting to such a level that eventually he comes to this realization in the show that the true warrior doesn't need to fight with a sword. It's as if after you have attained mastery, you are seeking novelty. Without novelty, guys, our souls will feel they're absent from the world. Without an honest effort to discover the new, the species has been too shackled by the past. Now, how something shifts, because we're talking about inner incompleteness. Inner incompleteness is a psychological state of mind. That means it is a state of mind. So how does a state of mind shift? We, for example, let's say we wonder about a state of body. How does the body change, or how does an object change? Those forces act on the object, and the object in some sense moves. So physical, let's say an outer shift would be in some sense matter moving. But an inner shift, because the mind is not an object, what is moving? Do you understand? So for the inner realms, if a person closes their eyes, what can move is in some sense, it's like an outer shift is the movement of an object being the center of meaning. And an inner shift is the movement of how a subject is being the center of meaning. And keep in mind the concept of inner incompleteness. Anytime the word incompleteness appears, it is just, how would I say it, an honest incompleteness is divine revelation. To me, it is as significant, right? Like, for example, the children of the future generations may think that divinity meant you had to act like in a certain religious way, and then it's like, wow, what a divine person. No. Divinity is when a species, in its efforts of transitioning from its individual suffering and going towards its collective efficiency, it's like, how would I say it? Right now we're living in an era of history where the mind is not free. The mind doesn't even know what it is, for most people. So many people say they have minds, but just by saying that means the who has. It's an additional dimension. An inner shift. Here, I'll write it here. Inner shift equals context of the world changes, and I would say the outer shift equals concept of the world's changing. And the most immediate and I would say the most immediate view of this, of the concept of the world changing, is in some sense concept equals self, context equals world. You know, people say, I've heard a bunch of people say they're not creative, or the person's just has this belief that's like, yo man, I was never creative in my life, you know. But let me tell you what it is. It's about the shift in your principal universal philosophy. You see, the world is kind of like a testing ground for new ways of human life. It's like, you know, sure, we look at it and we're like, wow, it's like the human species, what an adorable effort in the void, right, in the cosmos, you know, to advance in the cosmos. But at the same time, how our minds are present and how our personality moves our body, and how in the body's stillness the personality discovers that it's being moved before it moves by presence. That means what is animating human intelligence is not a thought, it is like a signal. It is, or I should say it differently, it is presence. Okay? A person can only notice their inner and out. You know what it is? It's like people who think they're not creative. They were not taught. You know, it's as if they were not given the proper context of why it is the most fascinating part of human life. Okay, you see, the human species has access to something that no other species evidently has. The human being has access to a physical life, a natural biological life. The human being has access to a linguistic life, a language-oriented character in a story, subject, you know, subjective kind of perspective. It's as if, and then it's like there's the physical dimension, there's the linguistic dimension, the subjective dimension. There is all the ways that language can connect inner vision to outer vision. Language is it's pretty much light is entering our eyes. It is translating into like a film or event, and then that inner film or event is translated into language. Then the language gets a life of its own. The nature of the human mind is not like we're just a person walking from birth to death. You know, what is really happening is that it's like a wave. It's like a sine wave was made into a roller coaster. Pretty much the brain is simulating itself in every moment. That means on some level, energy doesn't wear a watch. The deeper energetic essence of what is being the human experience, it is, you know, it's like, how would I say it, it's like behind your eyes, your house space is being regardless of what you do. In front of your eyes, you are in the material position of navigation. Do you know, it's as if life is a sort of transcendental hierarchical system of filled with so many different value systems. You know what it is? It's as if nature is doing something that human beings feel they're on the shoulder of a giant. You know. There will come a day where, right now in 2022, we're not there yet, but there will come a day in the future where the idea of what is looking out through the eyes of the human being is going to become more fascinating than like celestial visitors and time travelers. There will come a time when human beings will realize they are unknown, and the greatest levels of the inner realms will be released. Right now, the inner realms, it's kind of like, imagine that Lord of the Rings 2 scenario before one of the trees breaks open the water dam. You know. Life is not about just physical attainment, objective attainment, and subjective attainment. It's about how to be before being could be a story. Human consciousness is a triangular relationship, and triangular, people shouldn't freak out. Like before, Plato had an understanding of the triangle before, society, spooked itself out. Geometry has a purity that no ideology can attach itself to, really. Geometry is like a dimension where there is no judgment, it's just shape is all that is here. So I would say human consciousness, there's a trio, and I remember this is from a book I've written called The Great Work. It's a very strange book. I pretty much just trusted what I had written and just shared it. But anyways, in it I talk about this geometry. So pretty much 3 dimensions. These 3 dimensions need to activate in order for us to consider that there's a human being, right? If a human being doesn't have a sense of self, if a human being doesn't have a sense of others, and if a human being doesn't have a sense of what their world is really, like what incredible potential the world has, really, like how there's so much we don't know about the world that we're being in. Right, if a person has these 3 points acknowledged, right, then you are functioning in the domain of consciousness. Now, for me, the circle represents nature, right? And what is fascinating is that in this book, The Great Work, I share this idea this point should actually be here. But anyways, whatever. Okay, there we go. I think that's better. Now, it would be as if this would be A1. This would be A2. This would be A1.5. So pretty much the idea is over here. there we go. So pretty much the idea is that we can associate with any of these points, and the moment these three dimensions are acknowledged of self, others, and all that is, it's as if like these three dimensions are all held in one singular universal nature. You know, it's as if where the self is happening, where others are, and where the world is happening, it's as if on some level it's like pretty much human consciousness is an access to the mind's ability to fractalize itself, meaning it pretty much what the mind can do is just like a person can cut up, let's say, pieces of a cake, right? You know, or you know, cut a pizza into pieces. Similarly, it's like you can have a singular view on reality and truth. That means on some level, it's like we are tunneling through dimensions of perception, and psychological relationships are either between the self and the, let's say, S1 or S2 or S3, or the relationships are between S2 and O2, O2 and A2, A2 and S2, right? These are all the psychological relationships, but each of them has a sort of inner and outer. So I guess what would complete this picture would be this. There we go. Pretty much, you know, I guess what I'm trying to say in this episode. Honestly, the greatest aim of our physical life is an advanced civilization. An advanced civilization is another way of saying it is the greatest destiny of the human species. One of the greatest destinies. A greater destiny would be to go beyond what I term the language threshold. But anyways, I'll say it like this. Let's say we have inner life plus outer life. equals advanced life. And let's say we have the visions of an inner advanced civilization. I think this is something that many human beings should write books on. I feel everybody, the advanced civilization is not like, even though I feel I'm a pioneer, but but at the same time I will tell you, like, the idea of the advanced civilization is a transcendental idea. Is literally saying the greatness of everybody. What does that look like, right? And keep in mind the greatness of everybody, right? The species for a second puts away his fear mentality towards the future and realizes the future is uncharted territory. People laugh at certain, let's say, Amazonian tribes where they haven't, urbanized them but not, and they're living in their own world. And people laugh at those tribes, but I will tell you, you won't believe it. When you look at the galaxy, we are the same. And that means in every generation of human beings, explorers are needed. Explorers are the hidden angels that, in some sense, expand the mind of the world. You see, it's so remarkable. It's like where the human being is happening is a place of three events. Okay, there is an event of yourself that's happening. There is an event of the world happening, and there's events of others, other points of consciousness. To me, really, when I see people, before it was a sort of, all right, let me analyze this person's character, like Sherlock Holmes, it was like I had that attitude, but then I realized there's an unknown witnessing force that's unchangeably present. Because it's like it doesn't have shape, but it is here, right? That's like the mystery of mind. The mind cannot be its content. It's another way of saying human beings have no way to communicate the truth of the mind. It's one of the cool features of how this realm is designed. This world is designed, guys, to show us that we are multidimensional beings. And that the role of the human being, specifically in like other species, sure, let them have fun in nature, right? But when you look at the role of the human being, just by the nature of how advanced and further we can perceive, there comes the responsibility to build it. That means, let's say human beings wanted to build an advanced civilization, and some genius scientists in the future created some technologies that could in some sense give humanizable personality interpretation, accurate personality interpretations of animals, right? So imagine, like, if we somehow found a way to give a voice to all the animals in nature, right? From all the species, right? Except insects. Imagine that technology hadn't been developed yet, But let's say all the other animals. Okay, let's say anything, whatever, right? And so imagine we wanted to know the opinion of dolphins, elephants, whales, and birds. It's like we wanted to know, and the lion, like in some sense we wanted to know what a lion thought of an advanced civilization, and so imagine all the animals that have been given some sort of like advanced AI technology to be able to speak like a human being, and we wanted to know their opinion on the advanced civilization. They would say, what are you waiting for when you see so much further than us, right? The benevolence of an advanced civilization, that because it is claiming its ego is being born out of the greatest possibility the mind can fathom. Right? It's as if it's like a mind that doesn't, how would I say it? There is a sort of unborn greatness to how anything is moving in emptiness of a massive universal mystery. Right? It's like really teachers should be honest all around the world and be like, hey, everybody, nobody knows what's going on. We create created language to ignore how we were afraid of this mystery, right? Philosophers, to me, are some of the most bravest human beings, some of the bravest minds. Like sometimes when I, a hobby of mine is to pretty much see how other human beings looked at the world before I lived. And I can tell you, I am fascinated of how many minds on this planet have cared for the collective. Too many people on this planet have, in their inner realms, perceived a paradise on earth. These are signs, right? It's like when a species is waking up, like when a lion is about to roar, everything in the environment suddenly. Everything in the environment gets a feeling. Like imagine like Superman about to fly, like all the pebbles on the ground begin hovering, right? It's like a species is doing that, but instead of pebbles hovering, it's like minds awakening to the grander purpose of the species. It's as if when human beings build an advanced civilization, if there's any extraterrestrial, like intelligent extraterrestrial civilizations, they will probably watch. And they will watch and realize that our vision of our future is so pure, right, that in some sense it cannot be defeated, right? It's like a creature that is abiding in nature, right, in such a way where it's as if like technically decency cannot be touched by a decent soul. That means, let's say you have person A, let's say you have soul A and soul B, okay? And soul A in some sense, let's say, has aligned itself to chaos, and soul B has aligned itself to order, or vice versa, whatever. And so it's as if, from the perspective of the chaotic soul, who says the world deserves to be here? But from the perspective of the ordered soul, who says the world shouldn't be here? I'll go back to this. I'll say our inner life is on some level mystery of consciousness. Our outer life is biological continuity. Now, the purpose of the inner life to realize its true nature, or you can say true origin. That's the purpose of the mind. The mind actually doesn't desire any objects. The mind desires the salvation, of in some sense the identity. It's like when we ask the question, what are human beings? Like, what are we? Not who are we, but what are we? We see that we are, how the forces of nature in front of our eyes are keeping us. This is biology extended into the influence of cosmology on biology. how the whole universe is having an influence on how every person is being a human being. The mind wants to return to its source. The inner life is seeking truth. Truth's origin. When it comes to the outer life, I would say ability actualization. And novelty extraction. Comes down to, in my school, Mr.Within school of thought, let's say, as advanced communication. It's terrible handwriting, but anyways. This becomes advanced civilization. That means this is a bold statement, guys, but I'm that person in history who believes the purpose of outer life is to build an advanced civilization. There's no greater idea. In the inner life, to advance communication means to discover the source of the most advanced communication. The way I describe the advanced communicators, I think I am creating a class of human beings that will be free before they cannot be. Like right now, we can't build, like, let's say, futuristic technologies as a species, but in our minds, we can fathom it and we can shift the context of the world. it's like saying, what is the purpose of what we see behind our eyes, and what is the purpose of what we see in front of our eyes? And in some sense, the advanced communicator is the most advanced communication of the universal sector. It's just this idea that I'm saying the most advanced thing happening in this part of the universe is the advanced communicator. There's no longer, I would say, the advanced communicator is a way of judging human intelligence, where based on its effort to activate its potential, it is intelligent. So an advanced communicator is like a human being that has wondered about what the most advanced communication is, and has realized that the moment you look at the void and you notice the singular, the moment you look at the singular and you notice the dual, the moment you look at the dual, right, and you notice the infinite, you see, the mind of man, like our bodies are limited. Who says the mind is not limited? It's like the idea of infinity seems like the invention of an infinite being. What I'm trying to say is that just like a chess game where after the first 4 moves, like, I don't know, it's like billions of possibilities or something of different chess movement variations. In front of our eyes, an advanced civilization means all the dimensions we're physically seeing need to advance into their greatest possibility. That means whoever you are, whatever kind of work you're doing, right? Let's say you're someone who, works at a fast food place. It's as if wonder how an advanced being would work in a fast food place, And in some sense, it's this attitude of like a being that cannot. Let's say you had an infinite reserve of energy. It's as if you would have an infinite intent of effort. That means it's as if there's a might that comes with. It's as if, like, you know what it is? It's as if our ancestors and all the human beings before us lived to get us here, and the point of getting us here, and the point of every generation and every wave of human beings arriving, like right now I consider to everybody alive on the planet, it's as if like we've all appeared in the same existential wave. It's as if we're all pilots in the same sky. The evolution of the advanced communicator is that the most advanced communication is honest communication. Honest communication can be said to be the most simplest state of being, right? And so, what I'm trying to say is that the advanced communicator, before it can be an advanced communicator, has to wonder about the most advanced state of mind. And in Mr.Within school of thought, the most advanced state of thought, because I am, let's say, mystically inspired, I have made it synonymous to the concept of enlightenment, but the way I am seeing that idea, right? For some people, enlightenment is like, again, like maybe, sure, you can see it as a treasure to be revealed, but the idea is, imagine the moment you got the treasure, what then? You would be tired of the old treasure. You would seek the new treasure. Now imagine instead of treasure, it's a universe. And imagine that the mind had got to see this dimension, got to see this plane, and eventually, at the end of all days, it's like what happens? Honorably, the attention returns to the unconscious. Consciousness is like the microcosmic performance of a universe. We are blessed to be viewers of it. So guys, I just saw the chat section. Honestly, unfortunately, this episode, its rhythm is like this. I don't know what else I could do. I'm just hoping that its concept somehow reaches viewers. But anyways. Sorry guys. I was just thinking that from the idea of the advanced humanity, right, it's as if like we're wondering about the most advanced state of a human being. Once the treasure revealer finds the treasure, the desire for the treasure goes away. What we are drawn towards is how the context of the world has held our projection, our expectation of the future. Attraction is, in some sense, you could say, destiny's call. And you know, the brain is like, the moment we allow the idea of like there's a new day, it's as if there's a new self. You know, the first answer to all these deep questions on life is that we don't know. Then the second answer is like, okay, we don't know, but it still means we can still know, right? It's like another way of saying when somebody fails, I mean, that's another way of saying you can still succeed, right? But when a person succeeds, that's when they, in some sense, the concept of succeeding and failure goes away. We have to create an advanced civilization where in the outer realms human beings are living a very honorable and incredible life, right? And in the inner realms we want human beings that, let's say like in the future, human beings, their inner realms are going to be so advanced that it's like, imagine a bunch of kids have gone camping, and then suddenly one of them sits down meditating in the park, and like an antenna receives everything, gets to know everything that is happening on the planet. you know, right? Like, think of it this way: like back in the day, there was a bunch of doctors. They're like, all right, guys, time to like, you know, all of us work in the same building, right? And then hospitals were made, and now doctors are like a very important, honorable position on the planet. Everybody has to be very honorable and respectful to doctors. I feel this is like, you know, it should be like the patient's, you know, code of conduct or something. Doctors are the closest things to, I would say, angels in the outworld. To closest thing to angels for secular society. Alright guys, I'm done with the notepad. Does attraction change when inner incompleteness shifts? Attraction is based on where the attention has decided to go, or what the attention has accepted. Inner incompleteness shifts means like a character in a video game leveled up, and so it's like level 1 problems like couldn't apply to like a level 2 character. Do you know what I mean? Inner incompleteness means that it's like the outer life's potential and the inner life's potential and their synchronized potential hasn't been activated. When this is activated, it's like a bird simultaneously flapping its wings, you know. Reality has a multidimensional beauty. This multidimensional beauty has been denied to modern society because in some sense language is dualistic and reality's appearance, and it's like content-wise, reality it's a physical event, and physical event means our subjective consideration that matter is made of smaller particles, right? But now if we were to consider, for example, let's say the mind. You know, they say mind over matter, so we broke matter, we saw the smaller thing as things, let's say smaller particles. So now let's say we, in some sense, try to philosophically open the mind. And we got to see that the mind is events. Like, how can I tell you? The mind is made of events. Memories are events that most likely didn't complete, so they linger. Do you know? It's as if the true way to stand in the presence of the moment is to realize that the unknown has always been okay with the unknown, and it's just the known that is left to embrace them. It's like a greatness beyond conception. It's like an instantaneous entrance into the inconceivable, as if before we could go to another world, we were the source of all of it. William Blake says, without contraries is no progression. Attraction and repulsion, reason and energy, love and hate are necessary to human existence. Maharishi Mahesh Yogi says, all speech, action, and behavior are fluctuations of consciousness. All life emerges from and is sustained in consciousness. The whole universe is the expression of consciousness. The reality of the universe is one unbounded ocean of consciousness in motion. Guys, I'll read that quote again from Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. The reality of the universe is one unbounded ocean of consciousness in motion. That means the concept of a higher dimensional being is not like some fictional character in an invisible room, in an invisible dimension. It's as if the concept of a greater being is how when the attention or life force identifies with infinity, infinity is like the evolution of duality. And an advanced civilization would in some sense be the most advanced approach to emptiness, the most advanced approach to the singular. And I've given these classes names in my school of thought, I would say, where I am saying that those who believe the source of the causal position of reality is empty there's a quote which, it's such a beautiful quote, I can never forget it. It's this quote where I think it comes from either like an Middle Eastern context, or it comes from like the Cherokee culture. I don't know which culture, but there's like this, let's say, beautiful ancient saying where they say when the child is born, let me see if I can find the exact one. Okay, here, I'll say it before I search it. When the child is born, the world celebrates, like the world laughs, and the child cries. Now, there's a second part to the sentence. When the man dies, the world cries, and the man celebrates. That means the proper, even from a metaphysically spiritual perspective, like a traditional, let's say, Sufi perspective, it's as if we are here to live in such a way that not only our original self, in some sense, is acknowledged by the universe, but it's as if, imagine in an advanced civilization, people will not have a concept of death. They will just be like, see you later. Just as simple as that. as if human beings are so content with their multidimensional presence in reality. Even going from being, let's say, the zero dimension, you're a voidist, the singular dimension, you're a singularian, and let's say in a dualistic dimension, you're a dualist or dualitarian. And let's say when it comes to the infinite dimension, you're an infinitarian. And what I'm trying to say here is that we understood that the void is here. We understood how emptiness, space, has no meaning. It's just nothing lives in outer, as space. When we realize there is something in space, for example, let's say celestial objects and then creaturehood, we realize there's a beginning. The singular perspective means out of nowhere something happened. All arguments in human psychology that are born in time, that have meaning in time, will lead to this. It's imagine two people are arguing and it's the third person, if it comes to, in some sense, an advanced communicator comes to assist the argument, And it's as if the advanced communicator says, let's see if both of you are fighting over the same thing, or you both have different, or in your own universes raging, right? The knowledge of the mind that there is nothing here, there is no truth. The knowledge of the mind that everything is true, the singular. Oneness is the truth for the singularity. I would say for the dualist, karma, samsara is I would say an extension. That means if a person is still thinking there's good and bad people, it's oh my God, that's 1/4 of how we can look at the world. The infinite dimension, that hasn't even arrived yet. People right now are still convinced 100% that they are finite and temporary beings. It's nobody's questioning maybe there is something here that is not physical to even die. As if it has never needed to be born or die. It's like space is alive in ways that shape cannot see. True metaphysics is moving beyond the geometry of meaning. That means whoever you are listening to this, honor your local metaphysicist. So anyways, guys, thanks for listening. I hope this episode was hopefully somehow audible. But anyways, I guess I will see, what this episode deserves, and I guess so will the listeners. Much blessings and honest.